couldn't really see you actually.
Yeah, all of a sudden you guys are frozen.
Yeah.
So, I was saying, I'm not exactly sure when we got cut off, but I was saying, I certainly have lots of turtle art things that need doing if you're interested. Some of them, I don't know, there are people that are more interested in design and graphics as opposed to the coding part of things, or are there any G-streamer hackers in the room? They're all different types of things that need doing.
Right.
I'm just being selfish in terms of my list of things.
Right. I think.
But otherwise, I'll just be on IRC and we can just sort of see where things go.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is over the next hour or so, we'll try to figure out what our interests are, and then
Right, we'll keep you updated on the same.
Here's one little idea, just in case in case somebody's interested. I've written a series of programs using turtle art as a basis, but they're sort of puzzle programs. So one of them was called Turtle Confusion, and it's a series of about 40 geometry problems to solve using turtle art. But then I started making them where the geometry problems were customized to a place. So, for example, I made one based on the kinds of designs, geometric patterns you find in Peru. And I made another one based on the kinds of patterns and designs you find in Mexico. And so it occurred to me there's such a rich design culture in India that it might be nice to have a version of Turtle Confusion that is focused on the design and patterns that are found in India. So if there's somebody that's sort of into sort of more of the graphics than the programming, that could be kind of a fun weekend hack.
Sure.
So just throwing it out as an idea, again, being selfish.
Sure. If you could also, since you're
So I guess
the originator of turtle art, and basically you've been the one who's been pursuing turtle art, and I think there are more versions of turtle art than any other activity out there. If you could talk about why you think it is such a great activity and how it aligns with the principles of sugar and your interest.
Okay, yeah, happy to do that. Turtle art is one of a family of a number of programs that are all based on this programming language called Logo. Logo was invented in the early 1960s by Seymour Papert, Cynthia Solomon, and a few others, colleagues at Bolt, Beranek and Newman. Bolt, Beranek and Newman was a company in Cambridge near MIT that, among the other things they developed, was something called the ARPANET, which turned into the internet. So, but they developed Logo as a programming language for children, because at the time, computers weren't for children, but Seymour Papert had this idea that computation was a thing to think with. And he wanted to expose children to computation to enhance their cognitive development. So that's where Logo came from. And Logo was based on this idea of a little robotic turtle that would move around giving commands, and the turtle had a pen and would draw. And literally, the early versions of Logo involved a robot and a mechanical pen. And so in the 60s and 70s, Logo was always with a robot. And then it went on the screen, and it's only recently with things like Arduino and all that we're finally getting kids using robots again the way they were back in the 60s, in the 1960s. So it's taken us 50 years to rediscover that. But in any case, Turtle Art is actually the original version of Turtle Art was written by Brian Silverman. Brian has been part of almost every single one of these Logo environments over the past 30 years anyway. He did the Logo environment for Lego Mindstorms. He did an environment called Micro Worlds. Many of these different systems. He was also one of the people behind Scratch. He's pretty prolific. He handed Turtle off to me to maintain in the very, very early days of Olpc. And when I first got my hands on it, the thing that I worked on first was just to try and make the version that would work in Spanish, because so many of our early users were in Spanish. And it was a really tedious process. All the graphics were GIF files with the text written in. So it was all sort of, everything was hand done, and it just wasn't scalable. So I did some work on that. But then I got an email from a teacher in Uruguay who was using TurtleArt in her classroom, and she said, you know, we're teaching Pythagoras, and we need a square root block. Can you please add a square root block to TurtleArt? And my response to her was, well, Pythagoras didn't use a square root block. Why do we need one? And then she wrote back and said, well, yeah, this is the way we teach Pythagoras at Uruguay. We really need one. And then I replied, well, it's free software. Here's the source, why don't you just add one? And then I realized, you know, I'm asking too much. And this is sort of back to my point before about having the license to make a change versus the means to make a change. TurtleArt, free software, it was free to make the change, but when I looked at the code, I realized that it was impossible. It wasn't impossible for me, it was impossible for somebody new to programming to make that change. So then I've spent really the next 6 years trying to make it easier for end users to change TurtleArt. That's been my goal. And so we added an extension, a plugin library. I made it so that you can add your own blocks on the fly. I made it so that the code can be self-modifying. Did all these different things in the hope that the end users would be able to make their own changes and learn from making those changes. And there actually are quite a few plugins now, a lot of them for robotics actually. There's a nice plugin for, there's a device called XPIs. It was developed in Delhi by a professor at, can't remember the name of the
JNU.
university. Yeah. And it's, you know, so there's a TurtleArt plugin for that. It's really, really nice. If you guys don't have one of those devices, you should get one to play with it. It's a really powerful tool for exploring signal processing and, you know, some simple physics ideas. But anyway, the idea was to really make TurtleArt be something that was a more expressive environment for kids and and our end users. And actually, one of the things we're working on this summer, because again, actually one of the observations that Brian's made, that I've made, is that there's a big gulf between these block-based programming environments and text-based programming environments. The most complicated TurtleArt program I've ever written is about 1,000 blocks. And I routinely write programs of that level of complication in TurtleArt. But TurtleArt itself is probably, 40, 50,000 lines of code. So there's a huge difference. There's an order of magnitude difference between the complexity that one achieves with a block-based language and the complexity one achieves with a text-based language. And so I wanted to bridge that gap between those two levels of complexity. So this summer, I've got a student who's working on making it so that you can export your TurtleArt project as Python. And the idea is to sort of jettison the user out of TurtleArt into Python programming. And so we'll see how that goes. I mean, already you can export your project as SVG or as Logo, but I think if you can export your project as Python, it might lead at least some of our users into programming in Python and reaching to a higher level of complexity. So that's sort of the gist of it. Again, I think that TurtleArt is a nice, safe place to debug, to take risks, to make mistakes, to try things, to be expressive. We call it TurtleArt for a reason. And that is that we really want the kids to realize that computation can be in service of the arts and expression, not just in service of engineering and mathematics. In fact, I've been advocating for 2 or 3 years now in India and in the rest of the world. There's a big emphasis on what we refer to, the acronym is STEM: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Everybody's concerned about STEM. We need more science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But they're spelling the word wrong. It's not STEM, it's STEAM. It's STEAM. And the world is STEAM powered, it's not STEM powered. And the A in STEAM is the arts. Because without the arts, you lose a sense of purpose. And so, and also without the arts, you lose the opportunity to do open-ended problem solving. There's no open-ended problem solving in school, except in the arts. And so, you know, I'm really, with Turtle Art, hoping that we make art and expression be a more legitimate part of the expression with computing and technology. So anyway, that's sort of the background, and Turtle Art is really fun. I haven't used PowerPoint in 5 years. Every presentation I make, I use Turtle Art. I use Turtle Art for everything, because it just works, and it's easy and it's fun. You know, when I give a talk, I have 2 little turtles that are marching down the screen. One of them is just my slide counter, so it's marching down the screen showing my progress in my talk. And the other is my clock, the timer. So if I have 30 minutes for my talk, then the turtle takes, you know, 1/30th of a step down the screen per minute. So that by the end of my talk, I can see how far I am and pace myself properly. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things you can do when you program your presentation as opposed to just use PowerPoint or the open office tools. So, you know, more power to the end user.
Yeah.
Write your own.
Yeah, that's great. And if
Anything else for today, or should we just
what else?
start
Before we,
get off the IRC?
Before we conclude, a few words of motivation from you to the candidates here, although they are present here because of they are passionate to contribute to this project. But few words from you for them.
There are a couple of things that are nice about this project. In a typical free software project, this expression, you get to scratch your itch. You get to work on the things you care about. And Sugar, you can scratch your own itch, but you also are scratching the itch of 3 million kids around the world. So anytime that you do something in Sugar, you're impacting at least 3 million kids and giving them a better tool. So it's sort of an added incentive to engage, and it's just, I don't know, to me it's fun. I've got 2 very bad habits. I drink way too much coffee, and I write way too much Python. So I guess there are worse habits than coffee and Python. So anyway, enjoy it, have fun, ask lots of questions. You know, get on IRC. You know, people. You know, every time I get asked a question, I'm learning something, because I'm learning either, you know, some new idea, or I'm learning something that's not clear that should be clear. So I think people do appreciate the questions, and I think that you know, so go for it.
perfect.
Don't be shy, and yeah. Any questions out there? Was there a question in the back?
Sure, if anyone wants to raise a hand or
Guys,
ask a question or something.
Please don't be shy.
This is your
Come forward.
chance.
This is your chance. Anyone?
Okay.
Not the only chance. I'm on.
I guess we'll catch up
I'm
on
on
IRC.
my email, so
Yeah. Yep.
you can ask me questions whenever you want.
Yep. Definitely. Okay, Wonder. Thanks a lot for presenting this, and we'll see you on IRC in a little bit from now once we get started.
Okay.
Thanks for
All
joining
right. Well, have a great weekend hacking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Okay.